Yo, what is going on, guys? My name is Jared, and welcome back to another video. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video about creating realistic PBR textures in Blender for product labels, and in that video, I went through the process of actually making the label in Blender, but I didn't show you how to make the maps. I offered that in the video as kind of a separate thing, and a lot of people actually wanted it. There are several comments on that video asking for a basically start to finish tutorial on how I make product labels in Blender. And so I am here to provide that today. I'm going to start by showing you the finished product and kind of what all it is made up of. And then we're going to look at a print file for this label. And so I'm going to kind of show you how things are broken up in print and how they transfer into CG. And then we'll make the maps in Photoshop, and then we'll recompile it in Blender. So sounds like a lot of steps, but it's honestly not that difficult. And yeah, I'm excited to show you how to do it. So jumping into Blender here, you can see if I just kind of rotate this around, some of the different layers that are going on here. So we have on this label file, if I just come up in here, I'll show you what's going on. So we have a base color, we have a roughness, and we have a tactile map. Now these are three maps commonly used in print, and color is basically going to be our white layer in print. Roughness is like spot gloss or anything like that. That's kind of how that translates into 3D. And then tactile, normal or bump maps in 3D generally translate to a tactile layer on a print. Now, this particular label file, and I wanted to do something that's not just these because, if I plug this into my surface, you see that we get 90% of the way there. But there are also different elements to this label that take it kind of one step further. And so if I Control-Shift left-click on my mix shader here, you can see that there is also a metallic layer going on, or a foil layer rather, and there's also chrome in here. So those two maps are driving two completely separate materials. So this is three different materials that are combined together to create this final result. And I'm going to show you how I make all these images over here, and then ultimately how they're compiled together to create something like this. Now, if you are doing this as sort of a spec piece or something, like if you're just creating a concept in your head and all you have is a picture in your head, then you can kind of ignore this step here. But if you're looking to actually make labels for clients, or rather recreate physical labels in 3D for clients, you will be handed from any client a file that looks something like this. Every print designer kind of does theirs differently. They're sometimes just Illustrator files where like all of these four layers may be stacked on top of one another or something like that. Most labels that I work with only have like two of these images, for example, but this is a fairly complicated one, so I just wanted to show you the process on this. But basically, all that is going on here is we have what's called a white layer, and so this is like your color in when it comes to like 3D speak. I think this is actually the white layer. This is just the art layer. So this is your white layer. This is just called a knockout, and so this is basically where the chrome elements of that label I just showed you come in. If you knock out your white layer, you get this chrome element back here. So this is what we're going to use as our chrome plate when we go to make the map for it. This right here is going to become our tactile layer. So this we'll actually also create our roughness map from this layer. This is the stuff that's going to be both spot gloss and raised off the top of the label. And then this down here is going to be our foil map. It'll also be part of what we make our chrome map out of. And so I just wanted to kind of show this as an example of what a print file might look like if you're actually getting it from a client. Like I said, if you are doing this as a spec piece or all you have is a picture in your head, then I'm just going to kind of explain in the next part of the video where we create these in Photoshop, how you might have to go about thinking about sort of visualizing what a print setup would look like. So as you can see in our print file here, our total setup or our Photoshop document is going to be 11 inches in width by 4.5 inches in height. And that will be our starting point. So if I just Alt Tab into Photoshop, we can come to New File, and we'll do Pixels, inches, and we will do 11 in width by 4.5 high. And I will use artboards just for the sake of if I need them. And we can create this, and now we have our plate where we will set up our label files. To make setup pretty easy here, I'm just going to drag in my print file, and we can kind of scale it to the size of the document since it's vector. It probably will come in actual size. I'm just going to apply this transformation really quick and drag down to my color layer. If you're doing this for spec, you'll design your layer your label, from scratch, and then kind of meet back up with us on this step. Even if you don't have like a print file set up already, where some of the like maps that you're gonna need for 3D are made for you, it helps to have either a physical product or at least a picture in your head so that you can kind of put together like, okay, what elements of this label do I want to have certain properties? So like, what do I want to have be spot gloss versus what do I want to have be this foil? Because if I come up here and if I like plug my roughness into the factor on this mix shader, you can see that like where you plug things in really affects how this label is going to come out looking. So having something physical, whether it be a real product or just a picture in your head, is going to be extremely helpful here. So popping back over to our label file here, we are going to need to do a couple things off the bat. So we have our artwork here, and this will be our color layer when we export it, but you can see when I imported mine, this label has rounded corners. I'm not going to bother with that for CG purposes. So I just need to make a new layer and take a small brush with the color black and just kind of paint over these corners where these die lines are showing up. Now, I kind of like to go when making maps, how I know I'm going to go when I'm actually creating this product. So that generally is going to start with these three up here. That will be our color, roughness, and normal maps. And so I will just move on from my color because that will be basically what's exported here to creating our normal map, or our roughness map, sorry. To do that, I'm just going to create a copy of my print file and come down here to my image that I know is going to create my roughness map. Now, very important that we lower down our opacity here and zoom way in and make sure that these line up. If you are creating your label from scratch, you probably won't have to do this because you'll probably just be able to like duplicate layers on top of each other and make them what they need to be. But if you're working with a print file and you're trying to line these up, just like a printer would with actual plates, you have to be really detailed about how these line up, or if one of these is off even a little bit, like if I come back over into Blender and I take like my foil map, for example, if it were off by like 0.01 meters here, you're going to get some crazy results, and you don't want that. So be sure that you are annoyingly specific about how you line these things up. I'm going to take my opacity back up to the top, and just to show you how a roughness map is set up, if I just make my UV window much bigger here, basically with roughness, the white areas are going to be a roughness value of 1, and black areas are going to be a roughness value of 0. So that means that this, all the white space here is going to be completely flat, and all of the black space is going to be completely glossy. So that's how we need to set this up. And to do so, I'm going to come into my layer properties here, and I'm going to blend if, and I'm just going to drag this down until the gray background disappears on this layer. And so fundamentally, what we're doing here is we are just creating we're creating a new background, and any element that you want to be glossy in your final image, you need to make that black so that it has a roughness value of 0. And this is how a roughness map is created. That goes for pretty much any of these maps. It's all just controlling color to tell a program basically where you want a certain property to show up versus others. Now with our roughness map made, we can convert this to a smart object and call it roughness, just so that we know when we're exporting exactly what we're exporting. Next, we will do our normal map. So I'll just duplicate another one of my print files here. And so basically this is going to be our bump. To create a bump map with my particular label here, I can actually just invert my roughness map because I want my bump to show up in all of the areas that have spot gloss, if that makes sense. So I want my bump to show up in all of the areas that we made glossy, and that just happens to be reversing the values. But that would be a little bit hacky, so I'm not going to do that for the sake of making the video clear for everyone else. My bump map is going to be created from the same image that the roughness was made of. And to show you what this looks like, well, this is actually, I forgot, I actually made this into a normal map for this particular layer. But today we're going to create a bump map, which follows the same exact properties as roughness, where white areas will have a bump value of 1 and black areas will have a bump value of 0. Follows the exact same process. So we're going to do the same thing and get rid of the background so that we only have our elements left here. I'm going to convert these to a smart object. This time I'm going to create a black background because recall I want to have basically everything that is spot gloss here, I want to be elevated or bumped. I want it to be in my bump map, so I need all of those elements to be white so that they have a bump value of 1. And so this right here is my bump map. Before I move on to creating this in Blender, just for reference, if you want to create a normal map, I had one question on the last video, I think, about that. I'm going to use a bump map today. To create a normal map, you can literally just look up normal map generator, and there is a GitHub link here, and you can just drag and drop like your bump image, for example. You can just drag and drop this guy, and a normal map will be generated out of it, and you can control like blurriness and sharpness, the actual like height level, strength, all that kind of stuff, and then just download it, and it'll be the same size as all your other ones, so it'll slot in nicely. That's how I make normal maps, straight up. It's pretty simple. Now I can group these two, convert to smart object, and I can call this bump. While we're at it, I'll rename my color layer to color just so that we stay organized. So those are all 3 of the main images for the base texture. So this is what gets us to this right here, which is about, like I said, 90% of the effect. But there are some other things that I do to this particular label that I'm going to show you. And that is going to first, I believe, be our chrome map. Now to tell Blender where I want to put chrome, I'm just going to duplicate my print file once more and come down to this final image. Once again, I'm going to zoom in incredibly far to make sure that these line up precisely, just like my printer will do when they print these files. Let's have a look around. So I believe that right about here is where everything lines up. And so what this is going to be doing, since we want to tell Blender where to put chrome, or in just a second foil, this is going to be an entirely separate material. So if I open this up right here, this is going to be my like chrome material, and that's going to go into a mix shader. And so this map that you can see right here is just telling Blender where to basically show through that chrome material. And so exact same principle as we used for both roughness and our bump map. The white areas is where Blender will show through our mix material, and the black areas is where our original material from up here will show through. So to accomplish that, we want to knock out this background, and once again, we will create a black background and make the elements that we want to show through white. So let's knock this out. And now we are left with just the elements that we want. We'll convert this to a smart object. We will make them white. And we will put a solid black background in between so that we get just our elements. Now, I'm seeing on the edge that just because of how the maps are sized and stuff, I'm getting some color or some white color showing through on the edges here. I don't want a chrome border around my entire label because that's not how it is in real life. So I'm going to just brush that over like we did originally. Now, that is that map made, so we can convert this to a smart object, call it Chrome. And the very last thing that we need to do with this file here is overlay this foil on top of the Chrome. And so a lot of the elements that show up in our Chrome map, as you can see, are going to get covered by this foil, but that is just kind of how the layer stack plays out in 3D, and you can see it gives this really cool shine to our label in general. So I'm going to just tab back over, and I am basically going to just cover up this 25 serving number because I know that that is really the only thing I think that shows up on this particular label in Chrome. And if I spin this around, yes, I believe it looks like that is correct. On other labels, there would be more. On yours, you might have a whole separate map just for this, in your print file, I mean. But for me, it is as simple as just this text right here is the only thing that is Chrome. So in my foil map, I need all the same elements that I had in the original knockout, but I just have to block this out. And so these are your maps. I'll duplicate my Chrome layer, select my rectangle that I made covering that text, convert it to a smart object, and call this foil. And so that's all of our maps made. If you remember to do all the setup from the last video, then you, I guess, are done here if this was all you came here for. But now I'm going to jump into Blender and set all of these up in an actual material. So to get started here, I am going to delete everything that I had, and I will bring up an asset browser window, and you just bring in whatever container you need for your file. I'm going to come down to supplements and drag in basically the same thing I just had, but it has no materials on it. Just for the sake of being quick here, I am going to select my lid and my container, and I will create a new material, and I will go all the way black on the base color and roughness all the way down. And this is just a really simple kind of poopy plastic material. I have one that I normally use, but this video isn't about that one. It is about the label file. So I'm going to click New, and now we have our principled BSDF that our color, roughness, and bump maps will go into, and then we will create the other ones after that. So just navigate to wherever you exported your files to, and we can start by going ahead and dragging in our color. In this folder, I have two normal maps. You can ignore them because we didn't make them and aren't going to. So now we can go ahead and just start with our maps here. So now we get to start plugging stuff in. So for this main principle BSDF, like I mentioned before, we're going to need our color, our roughness, and our bump. And then I will just kind of drag these out so that we keep our file pretty. And then we can drag our color straight into the base color, and you can see that we're already getting started here. Our roughness, we will Shift A and add in a color ramp. And this is just so that at any point in time, us or anybody else who touches this file can control the roughness output. Like if, for example, these weren't going to be completely black or completely glossy rather, I could drag this up and change the gloss level. You can also do that just based on, for example, how you need the lighting to interact with the product and stuff. That's what this color ramp is good for. And then we will Shift A and add in a bump and do color into height and normal into normal on this. And you can see that we have some really cool tactile layers popping out here. I find that one normally doesn't look super natural. I drag this down to like a 0.35. I find that to be much more kind of physically accurate to what this product looks like in real life. So this is our base material, and now we get to start adding our chrome and foil on top of that. And to do that, we will just come down here and we'll do Shift A and add in a new principled BSDF. And with it, we will have to have a mix shader. And we can just kind of be sure we stay organized. We can do our BSDF we'll put our main principled BSDF into the top shader, and then what we're going to turn into chrome into the bottom. And then we can Control Shift left click, assuming you have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, to make the mix shader our output. So at the moment, this is just mixing between these two freely. There's no factor, and it doesn't look like chrome at all. So I'm going to turn the factor up to 1 just so we can work on this chrome material right here. We're going to need our metallic to come all the way up and our roughness to come most of the way down. I'm also going to take my base color and drag it to right about here because I don't want it to be super bright. You can kind of make your own discretion on what you want to do with the base color. This is also ultimately how we're going to make our foil. Spoiler alert. So now what we get to do is come in and grab our chrome map that we made. And this I'll just put in line with the other images and pump the color straight into the factor. And now you can see that we have our chrome boxes that we left in here, including our text down here. And now you can see that we have our chrome boxes that we made. And so that's shining through nicely. And all that's left to do is wire up our foil. This principled BSDF only has one input, so we don't need it all kind of twirled down and stuff. I'll duplicate this one since it already has most of the properties we want. And then to create our foil, we'll need another mix shader. And we'll put our first one into our base and our new one into our shader. We'll wire that up to the out. And all we have to do is select a color. You can select any one you want. I'm going to do the green that is associated with this product flavor. And then we can just wire up our foil map. Drag this in here and do color into factor. And you can see we have this super depth heavy, dimensional, extremely cool label. And we made it from scratch, and it didn't take that long. So this was a pretty highly requested video based on the last one, or the last video that I did. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, please leave a like or a comment. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, particularly if I can make another video about them. I would love to do that. I, again, really hope this helped, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.